obviously when I'm dealing with my clients, and all of our advisors are like this, you try to do the best job for them in case something happens.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Blue Collar Wealth Podcast. We call it that because this is a show about real finance for real people. We often get asked questions about what kind of clients do you work with at Stonehouse, and the term that I always like to use is blue collar wealth. Most of our clients have anywhere from $500,000 to many millions of dollars saved up in their retirement, but they don't necessarily care about buying a giant yacht somewhere and sailing it to the south of France. Instead, most of our clients are asking us, how do I squeeze the most juice out of my retirement and live a long, happy, healthy life? Well, my name's Bob Brown. I'm a certified financial planner, and I'm a founding partner here at Stonehouse Retirement Income Planners. I've had the privilege of helping many, many families plan and live their lives for over 20-some years now. And I'm part of a growing team here at Stonehouse, and we've seen so many clients go through so many things in their lives. And now, thanks to the power of the podcast, we can share some of those stories and maybe even some shortcuts so you can hopefully get on track and stay on track with your own finances. In this episode, I'm excited about this. We're going to talk about the best retirement gift you can give yourself. You may very well be feeling overwhelmed by all the things you need to talk about or think about when it comes to retirement. Who would have thought there'd be so many moving pieces? And maybe, just maybe, you've given thought to even more than that. Not just how do I retire and what needs to happen in those several days or weeks that you go through that process, but the bigger question is, what about all the decisions I'm going to get hit with throughout my entire retirement, my entire lifetime? Social Security, Medicare, taxes, my kids, my parents, my expenses, my lifestyle in general. Well, you're not alone in this. There's many people just like you that feel this way. And so by the end of this podcast, I hope that we're able to get you to a better place where you can understand the importance of coordinating all those items, why it matters that they work in unison, and we'll share how we track these important pieces of your life here at Stonehouse. Maybe, hopefully, we can even find a way for you to just kind of push an easy button, let somebody else do it for you. To help me discuss coordinating the important pieces of your life, I brought in John Burke. John's one of my partners here at Stonehouse. He's also an advisor at Stonehouse and has experience working with people just like you who are trying to put all these pieces together. All right, John, thanks for doing this recording with me today. We're talking about the complexities. I know we see a lot of folks that come into our office and they sort of a deer in the headlights, just analysis paralysis, whatever you want to say. When they are starting to move into retirement, they realize the act of retiring itself often has a lot of moving parts. But as I said in that intro, the complexities don't end a week after you're home in retirement. There are many, many decisions over the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Right.
So I know we have I think it's an amazing system. We call it LifeSTACK in our office. I'd love for you to talk about that, but maybe talk first about how that kind of came to be.
Yeah.
Because it didn't happen overnight.
You bet. I think that's important. So when I joined Stonehouse, which was almost 15 years ago, time does go by. We were focused in on, like you said, how do you get people to retirement, and then how do you manage those assets, which was obviously completely appropriate. How do you do all those steps in a way to minimize taxes and all those sorts of things? And the business has evolved over that period of time where you still are working through the assets, still managing the assets, trying to maximize clients' return and minimize those taxes. But now you have all those other parts of the business, things like Social Security planning, Medicare planning, home and auto insurance. What does your estate plan look like, where we try to use that LifeSTACK system that you mentioned to make sure we're doing that in a systemic way. So we built that through years of experience where we used each of our advisors' stories and interactions with clients to build a checklist around each one of those topics. Because if you have a great plan for your stocks and bonds, but something happens where the tax plan gets off track or your estate plan blows up and doesn't provide what it's supposed to do, it's really going to provide a drag and less money for you in retirement. And so the whole idea is, how do we do this in a way where we're sort of the quarterback of each one of these items to make sure each of those plans comes to fruition?
First off, my wife told me not to use sport references, so you're in trouble for that one. But
Okay.
but we have seen this, and I'm just sharing this with those watching. I know you've seen it where people come in and they don't. It used to be when they came into the office back years ago when I started, 20 some years ago, and we do a review, and it was really just about their portfolio. They
Right.
they had several accounts. What did they do over the last 6 months, over the last year? And sometimes it wasn't really sexy or exciting to talk about. There wasn't much movement. There wasn't much going on. We're going to maintain and hold. And you kind of wondered, do you need to even have those conversations every 6 months, every year, maybe even every quarter?
Right.
But then what happens to a lot of folks is that they don't coordinate all these other things. And I think that a lot of people think of a financial advisor as the guy or girl who manages my money.
Right.
And that's just a piece of quite a complex picture that we manage. And I would say it's not even, it might not necessarily be the most important piece. It's one of several very important pieces, because people will come in and they're just by a beneficiary is off on one of their accounts. They're not paying any attention. They pass away, and everything they had and as you just said, in place falls apart because of that one title. It's titled incorrectly. The beneficiary wasn't changed or updated,
Yep.
and it all blows up. So these are real things. It's not just fancy window dressing of, hey, look what we can do. These are things that have saved and helped people in a lot of situations. And we've seen a lot of examples in our office.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about a few of those examples. And so let's take a look first at maybe one of the easier ones, which is home and auto insurance. So we're not agents. We don't sell insurance.
Sure.
But we do benchmark and take a look at coverages and then suggest possibly going back to that insurance agent and saying, hey, is this the right amount of coverage for me based on my financial situation? So things like umbrella policies to make sure liability is in place. And I have a specific one in mind of a client that I helped with get their under and uninsured motorist coverage to a higher level. And unfortunately, they were in an accident, and that was able to pay them out and help them out because the client, or not the client, the person that hit that client did not have the right amount of coverage. It was state minimum, and that person had some unfortunate injuries based on that. And so having that conversation years in front of that unfortunate incident ended up helping that client, at least financially. And then you run into things like Social Security optimization.
Can I back you up on that?
Sure, yes.
So you probably don't want me to say this, but I'm going to. I remember you coming in and sharing that story when it happened, and that was an emotional thing. I remember you telling me,
Yeah.
The client came in and they told me what happened, and I think their attorney said, like, your insurance coverage is fantastic, and
Yep.
they came in to you, or she came in, and you got emotional when they told you, when you were telling Scott and I in the office about it. You were emotional. It was a horrific situation, but you felt so good that you had helped them.
Yeah.
And because of this system, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I obviously, when I'm dealing with my clients, and all of our advisors are like this, you try to do the best job for them in case something happens. And so
Right.
there's good times in this business, and there's some not so good times.
Sure.
But that was one example on the insurance side. And then, if you think about Social Security optimization, this is something that, a lot of folks think, hey, I'm going to definitely just take it right at 62 as soon as I'm able to do that. But there's some reasons around spousal coordination and delaying that and coupling that with their tax plan to minimize those Social Security taxes, where we take all those things into consideration for folks. And that can be an extra $1,000 a month for that client for the rest of their lives if they do decide to delay. And so we want to go through that in great detail. Then things like Medicare planning. We do offer some Medicare services through Stonehouse as well, but we're looking at those things several years in advance of a client turning 65. That way, when the mailers that show up every day or two, they're not feeling overwhelmed about what they're seeing, why they're seeing that, and they have a plan going into that to make sure that they're keeping the right amount of coverage, getting those out-of-pockets, those co-insurance costs as low as they possibly can for the rest of their lifetime. So that's another example of things that we'll do. And then we already talked a little bit about the estate planning stuff. We're not providing those legal services directly. We're partnering with an estate planning attorney to take a look at what should those titling of beneficiaries be, what should the will say, and how to coordinate that with their other assets, making sure there's a living will, a power of attorney. And some clients choose to have us keep them in their electronic vault, default. So that way, if something did happen, we're sort of that one-stop shop for those clients to be able to access that for either themselves or their heirs in that situation.
Yeah, and I like the way that we have the system built. Obviously, we all had a part in putting it together, but what I like about is the visual. We put it right up on the screen when people come in, or if we're doing it virtually over the computer or whatever,
Yep.
we put it on their screen at home. And what's nice about it is we have all the pieces of their life that we've talked about, and we kind of have them color coded, right? If they're green, that means we just talked about it fairly recently, and that seems to be good. If they turn red, it means it's been a while, or we haven't reviewed it at all.
Right.
We go through that piece of their life, and it makes the regular meetings that we have with people, the follow-ups, much more efficient, right? Because
Right.
you do a lot of it. A lot of your clients like frequent follow-ups, or like you like to do the frequent follow-ups, and they acquiesce to what you say. But when they come in, they know they're doing something. It's not just like, oh, what do the markets do for
Right.
2 minutes, and then just idle chatter. It's like, hey, since things are calm over here, let's do some of the work we talked about over here, so this all works together.
Right. The other piece of that I think is important is it's a standardized process, meaning whether you're meeting with myself as your advisor or with you, there should be similar activities and conversations happening. Your style, of course, is going to be different than mine.
My style is way better.
Right. So it's one of those things where I think it's different, of course. It's making sure that we have best-in-class knowledge and conversations with those clients to make sure we don't miss anything. And so whether it's the newest advisor in our office or the most experienced, that example of how that client conversation should be pretty similar.
Yeah, that's great. Anything else on LifeStack and coordinating all this? Anything anybody should be thinking about or doing things differently? Anything to add on that?
The only thing I'd probably add is we talked about this sort of from a retirement perspective, but the same applies for pre-retirement. So, a lot of times the 30-year-old who's actively working thinks, well, that's retirement, that's out there. I can just sort of add money to the 401k option or the profit sharing or whatever that happens to be. That's true, but there's still a lot of moving parts for the pre-retirement clients as well. So I'd encourage them to, seek out an advisor like us to help them with those things because they're going to need heavy emphasis on what that savings plan looks like. The estate plan is very important for those folks too, especially if you have children, of making sure guardians are appointed, God forbid something happens. And so that process that we do for retirement folks also applies for pre-retirement.
That's great. Yeah, it's a great tool. I know other places do it. I've not seen anyone doing it quite the way we do it, and I'm very proud of that product. And I think our clients give us a lot of great feedback. So thank you for taking a few minutes out of your always busy day to do this stuff. And for those of you watching, if you find yourself overwhelmed by the complexity of all these moving parts, I think John just made a good case for why you should go ahead and organize that and how important that is. And we certainly have an easy way of doing it here. It's just a matter of giving us a call. If you want to look for outside help, we're happy to do it. We do it all the time, and we love doing it for folks. So if you're interested, give us a call, and we hope this was helpful, and we'll see you on the next one.